everybody, it's Frankie-Lou. I'm coming to you today from my very messy Grow Together homestead, where I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite subjects today, seed saving. Now normally I wouldn't be doing this video this late on, but we've had such a wonderful fall here that the cleanup and the final push for seed saving has been postponed a bit. But I know that lots of you are having a wonderful fall, so hopefully this isn't too late to be of help to some of you guys, because seed saving, if you've never done it before, really is one of the most rewarding things I find myself personally about growing my own food, because I do like to think of seeds as perfect little packets of promises for next year's garden, and being able to harvest those from your own garden is extremely satisfying. Being able to see that generational move from garden to garden to garden from seeds that you've collected yourself. So let's get started. First off, the number one tip I have for seed saving is ensure that you're using appropriate varieties. You want to stick with things that would be labeled as heirloom varieties and open pollinated, because those seeds, when you collect them from your own vegetables, are going to be closer to the parent plant. They tend to breed true. There will always be diversity within a group of plants, but there is a higher likelihood of breeding true to the parent plant if it is an heirloom variety. Okay, that's something that's been tested over time. It's not a hybrid. With an heirloom variety, you're less likely to have cross-pollination happen and see new traits that you haven't seen before show up in your seed once you plant it. So I do find that when I am sticking with heirloom varieties, I get better results if I'm trying to come up with the same thing year after year. There are a few occasions where I have actually played with non-heirloom variety to get some hybrids that I like I've been really lucky myself with a cross-pollination that's occurred between a purple pea and a snow pea. That is, I found far hardy here on my homestead, and now that's what I plant. But if you're purchasing seeds for the first time, do try to stick with those. Okay, second of all, and this is not going to be fun for those of you who like to keep tiny gardens. When it comes to seed saving, you really have to allow your plants to fully mature, fully bolt, fully flower out, fully go to seed. And that usually means to get fully ugly too. Leave it be. I know it's quite tempting. We've been taught to deadhead. But when it comes to seed saving, you're looking for the exact opposite. You want to allow that plant to fully mature, which means it's going to get scriggly and scraggly and stuff's going to be all over the place and it's not going to look pretty anymore. But just think of it as a second harvest that you're making. That's actually going to produce far more, because one plant can usually produce hundreds of seeds. Don't be so worried about how tidy everything looks. Just let it go. Then another thing you want to do is you want to ensure that you're choosing the best specimens from your garden to get your seeds from. I had mentioned earlier that there always is diversity within, every seed contains all the information it needs to create the next plant. But sometimes there will be a little diversity, and some seeds will produce much bigger tomatoes, say, and much juicier tomatoes than a seed in the same packet. Okay? So what you want to do is you don't want to pick your littlest fruit. You want to pick your best fruit. You don't want to pick the thing that bolts the fastest, because that seed might be carrying the genetic potential for fast bolting. You want to pick your best, tastiest. You just save a few of those seeds from those plants, so that's the trait that's going to be carried on in the seeds that you collect. Okay? Another thing you might want to consider doing when you're choosing the plants that you're going to collect your seeds from is consider those volunteers. And what I mean by a volunteer is a plant that you didn't plant the seed and it's growing anyways. And generally those seeds tend to have hardy traits, okay? Because this thing has come up without any help from you. Maybe that's a good one to grow in your hardy conditions. I live in zone 3. And so when I see a volunteer coming up that I didn't do anything, and it's coming up and it's producing fruit on its own, that's the one I'm definitely going to collect seeds from, because that seed will have that hardy trait that's going to survive my winters. Or just plants that are coming up and doing well that I know have self-seeded, those are a good choice as well. Now, when it comes to storing seeds, you don't have to do anything crazy, all right? Like, seeds have been around for over 300 million years and they know what they're doing, okay? They don't generally need to be frozen. They don't need to be freeze-dried. They don't need to be shrink-wrapped. The number one thing that's going to affect the viability of your seeds, and possibly in a bad way, is if it gets exposed to too much humidity. So it's really essential that you let those seeds dry completely before you store them away. And when you do store them away, you don't want to be storing them in plastic, probably. It's a good idea to choose something like, I love these coin envelopes because they're paper. So if I did make a mistake and didn't allow my seeds to fully dry, I know that this paper is going to absorb a little bit of that moisture. So I just label the front, put the date on it, so I know when I did store that seed, and it's going to keep for quite a while. And that brings up another point. When you buy seeds from the store, it usually has a little date on it that says you need to plant that seed within this year. Not true. Seed viability does go down over the years, and there are some other videos I've made about germination tests and stuff so that you can test your seed viability. But honestly, I have planted seeds that are a decade old and they've been just fine. I may not get as many plants from a packet of seeds that's 10 years old, but it's likely that I'm still going to get some good seeds if I've stored it properly. So do ignore those dates on the bottom of your seed packet when you purchase them, because they will last longer. And so as long as you keep your seeds nice and dry and store them away properly, it's likely that you could have your seeds last a good long time. Now, when it comes to drying those seeds, here are some little suggestions I have for you. These are awesome, okay? I use these little produce bags, these mesh produce bags, for so many things now at the homestead, because A, I can wash them and reuse them. B, they are a fine mesh. And I used to store my seeds in paper bags, especially if they were flyaway sorts of seeds, and to allow them to dry. But this is better, especially if I set a fan up nearby it. So I'll give you an example here. So here I have some beautiful little green lettuce seeds. And as you can see, they're flying away, right? Like, that's what they're intended to do. They've got little puff balls on them, very like what you see in dandelions, okay? But if I put them, and so they're doing their job, they're flying away. That's how they're intended to grow. But if I put them in this baggie, I can put a fan on this, set it up next to a fan, or just hang to dry if I'm not in a hurry. And these things aren't going anywhere, okay? They're gonna dry out nicely, much better than they would in a paper bag because they're exposed to air. And then when it comes time to remove the seeds, I can just do this, just sort of thresh them and pull out the stalks, and you'd see that there's a whole bunch of lovely little fluffy lettuce seeds in the bottom of this, okay? So number one thing is, honestly, if you are big into seed saving, I highly recommend going out and getting some of these. Next, you might have some seeds that are on tall structures. And what I mean by that is, for instance, see these lovely orache seeds? Okay, these are huge. And I want them to be placed somewhere where they're going to dry out properly. I actually am starting to get my fall rains here. So it's time to bring these inside to dry. I've got thousands, but I do love, this is one of my favorite plants. And so the seeds that I'm going to share with my friends and family next year, I do want to make sure it dries properly. But where am I going to put this? Well, this is what I like to do now. I find it really, really helpful. I get myself a bucket. I fill it full of dirt. I put an old tomato cage in it. And I shove these babies down inside of it. Okay, I'm going to fill this full of seeds, and they'll stand upright. They won't be lying down where they're going to attract any moisture off of another surface. They're standing on their own. I could set up a fan close to this if I want as well, if I'm going to put this inside. And I found that this is an extremely effective way to get those big things drying out, is in one of these tomato cages in a bucket. So you might want to give that a try. And if you're worried about droppage, just place it inside somewhere where there's some ventilation and put a towel down below. So another little tip, a lot of people love to save tomato seeds, and why wouldn't you? Because honestly, tomatoes are one of the most rewarding things you can harvest from a garden, because it tastes completely different when you take it from your garden than it does from the grocery store. But trying out tomato seeds can be a real pain in the butt. I do have a whole video about that if you want to see about all my tips for tomatoes in particular. But I just wanted to give you one little quick tip for all those wet seeds, your cucumbers, your squash, your tomatoes, the stuff that you have to scoop out of the inside of a vegetable to dry out. I used to use paper towel, and that's great. They dry great on paper towel. But removing those seeds from the paper towel once they've dried out is a pain in the butt, okay? Parchment paper is a better choice. It is absorbent as well, but it doesn't have fibers on it. It's not sticky, and it's so easy to take your tomato seeds or your cucumber seeds or your squash seeds off of here once they're dry. Does that make sense? Give it a try. You'll be grateful that you did. I couldn't believe it took me so long to figure that one out. All right, so that's it for today. As I said, I do have way more details about specific seeds and various in several other videos that I've published over the years. But these are the top tips, okay, for those who just want to get started. Number one, starting with heirloom varieties is a good idea. 2, choose your biggest, your best, your most delicious things to choose your seeds from. 3, let it fully mature, okay? Don't tidy that garden up if you plan to do some seed saving from it. Let it go bolt, let it go to seed. Number 4, ensure those seeds are fully dried out before you attempt to store them, which leads to number 5, store them properly. Label them. You'd be surprised how quickly you forget what's in a seed bag, and looking at it, you think you're never going to forget. But when you're storing hundreds of kinds of seeds, you can very quickly forget what each of those seeds is. So store it properly in something paper where it's going to stay dry. Okay? So I hope that was helpful. I'm going to be trying to get a whole bunch more videos done over the next little while about some of the other things we got going on here, more of my winter sowing experiments and creating some things with rose hips. Please do subscribe if that's something you're interested in. And as always, I hope you'll take this chance to grow together today. Have a good one.